last week, but let me tell you, there was some good stuff going on at the prison, too. You should have been there. I'm thinking a lot of you should be in prison. But no, get me wrong about that. And for those of you joining us online, welcome. And you missed my solo. I got a standing ovation. And if you don't believe me, then just come down here next week and just check for yourself. No, I really appreciate our band. I mean, each Sunday and Monday, our band is up here making the best praise and worship music, and we had some fill-in people, and I'm so glad that you guys came to help out because, maybe because of this guy here. Because we love this guy, and we miss him. And yes, I know, and I told him, you ruined my sermon, because I was going to have everybody take out their phones and text, I love you, and we miss you, and get well soon. We could still do that, yes, but he's back there, so maybe we can tell him on the way out, Chris, we miss you, we love you, we're so glad that you're getting better. But I love music. I do, I love music, and I like music of all types. I love our praise music, and I love the old hymns of the church, and I grew up in the 70s listening to rock and roll, and I also grew up in the South, so I listened to country music. And, of course, I like gospel music. Years ago, the Oak Ridge Boys had a song called Rhythm Guitar. And the lyrics said, nobody wants to play rhythm guitar behind Jesus. Everybody wants to be the lead singer in the band. And that's true. And if it's... As someone with no rhythm, no musical ability, sometimes I feel frustrated by the fact that I can't lead music as some pastors do. I can't do that. I can make a joyful noise, at least in my ears. And we see every week too, Mark and Justin and Cam and Robert and Jill, they get up here and they sing and dance, and I love that. But I have no rhythm. So, just as we dance with music, though, there is a rhythm to life. And each of us has a rhythm to our life, and a rhythm we dance to through life. And as we hear our life's rhythm, we accordingly dance to it in our own way. So the question is the rhythm we're dancing to the best rhythm and the right rhythm for us? So that our life's dance will produce peaceful results than what we need and want? Or are we choosing to maybe try to waltz in a mosh pit? And that's what I want to look at this week. In this message series, it's all about time. And today, it's all about time about learning to dance to the rhythm of peace rather than the rhythm of chaos. And we want to choose the right rhythm of our thoughts, our emotions, our spiritual life, our physical life. So our dance will be rich and rewarding, both in the busy times and in the slower times. So let's start with maybe a little self-evaluation. Is your internal rhythm of life peaceful, or is it chaotic? How about your external life? I sometimes end up living like a game of whack-a-mole. You ever play that? Something pops up, so I deal with it until something else pops up, and then I deal with that until something else pops up. And I could really use a rhythm of peace. So how is your rhythm of life? For me, I admit from time to time, I do manage to find some peace, or a piece of a day maybe, where I'm reading. I've got my cup of coffee nearby, but if I'm completely honest, often I'm like the person who eats Whoppers and fries every day and then tries to get healthy once a week by eating a salad, and then wonders why their blood work is still out of whack when they go to the doctor. My rhythm of peace isn't an actual rhythm. Many times it's just an occasional guitar solo in the midst of my life. And something I experience now and then and expect to sustain me always. So if you're like me and you're ready to stop playing whack-a-mole on the symptoms of a chaotic rhythm of life and want a continual rhythm of peace, a time with Jesus that can sustain us through anything and everything. I know it's not that easy because sometimes it can feel like, well, I know I can feel like I need more hours in my day. Yet nobody was busier and had more on his mind than Jesus. He had the salvation of the entire world to deal with, and he managed to live a rhythm of peace right up until the very end. Now you may say, well, yes, of course, but he's Jesus. He's the Messiah. Of course, Jesus can live a rhythm of peace, but I'm just a human. I can't do that. Well, true, Jesus was God, but remember, Jesus was also fully human. And the way Jesus lived his rhythm of peace is an example and a gift to you and me about how we can use our rhythm to be peaceful too. So let's try to answer the question today: how can I live my life in a rhythm of peace as Jesus did? And when I read the Gospel of Luke, which the story of Jesus told from Luke's perspective, I see a rhythm of peace in Jesus' daily life. Jesus lived a particular rhythm that was essential to his well-being and his faith life and his ministry to others. And he had an entire rhythm of life connected to the Father in a continual, beautiful walk with God. So let's appreciate Jesus' rhythm of peace and allow him to teach us this new dance. Here's the first way I can live with my life in a rhythm of peace. Pause in my busy day and life as Jesus did. And this is so crucial. If I can only remember to press pause as I rush through my day, I could avoid a lot of stress. I mean, Jesus was a busy guy. In the Gospel of Luke, after Jesus is called into ministry, he began traveling around and teaching the good news of salvation in synagogues and casting out demons and being chased out of towns and healing sick people and identifying and calling his disciples, and while he was preaching and preaching and preaching. Now, how did Jesus do this without going out of his mind? Where did he get his strength, his compassion, his wisdom, his miracle-working power? How did he deal with the overwhelming demands and stress of ministry without becoming overwhelmed? Well, no doubt, Jesus had far more responsibility and pressure than you or I or any other human being has ever had, yet he remained relaxed, patient, joyful, and generous with people, including a lot of really difficult and very needy people. So how did Jesus do it? Here's how Jesus responds to all the pressure at the height of his popularity. Luke 5:15 through 16 says, "But despite Jesus' instructions, the report of his power spread even faster, and vast crowds came to hear him preach and to be healed of their diseases. But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer." Now, if you're a person that likes to take the notes and to underline your notes and do things like that, you might want to underline that word often. Because we read in the Bible that Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and favor with God and man, and he learned obedience from what he suffered. And it's awesome to realize that even Jesus had to grow in grace and learn to obey God. And he did this by often withdrawing for prayer. Jesus had a habit of pushing pause in the rhythm of his ministry. He didn't just do it now and then, or it says often. He had a habit. And when did he pause to do, or what did he pause to do? To connect to God. He knew he needed to be connected to God. And it was Jesus' rich life of quiet prayer and tender intimacy with the Father that was the source of his love, wisdom, and power. His peaceful rhythm was because of his connection with the Father. Jesus connected with God, and then he served. He prayed alone in the quiet, and then he prayed in community in the synagogue or on the road. He worshiped alone, and then he went and healed people. He meditated on Scripture, and then he taught astounding new insights to others. He fasted, and then he fed the hungry. He rested in quiet, and then ministered to the noisy crowds. He withdrew on retreat, and he was patient with people who interrupted him. He paused to be with God. So what would it look like for you and me to learn to pause as Jesus did? To experience the connection with God before going forward with our next move. I don't mean just the next thing, but I mean everything. I don't mean just once in the morning or a quick prayer before we eat our burgers and fries. Are we really experiencing Jesus to break into our lives when we pray, especially when we pray over cheese fries? Don't understand that. How could we experience a more peaceful rhythm of life if we paused and really expected to connect with God over and over again throughout our day? Jesus is confident in teaching you and me that in the midst of a stressful world, we can learn to live in God's unforced rhythms of grace, to walk freely and lightly in the good times and the bad, happy and sad, if we can only pause often to seek the one whom we walk with. Jesus needed that continual pause, and so do we. Pause. Pause often. And this is a rhythm we can learn. And here's what's next. What we would do if we would pause, if we actually pause. That's, what we would do if we actually pause. Well, I'm glad you're asking. To follow Jesus' rhythm of peace, I can ask God for direction, as Jesus did. What keeps the message from being just another self-help, which I'm not trying to do, or just a system or a gimmick, is what we do when we pause in our chaotic life. Because Jesus asked God for direction in all things. During the time when Jesus was choosing his 12 apostles, read with me what happened before he chose them in Luke 6:12-13a. One day soon afterward, Jesus went up to the mountain to pray. And he prayed to God all night, and at daybreak he called together all the disciples and chose 12 of them to be apostles. So this was an important decision, choosing apostles. I mean, in the Bible we watch those guys that they evangelized to the whole world, and they were not just the sort of leaders that were obvious, really. I mean, they weren't the ones that we would call the low-hanging fruit on the religious tree in the Jewish world. I mean, they hadn't been chosen by any other rabbi to study under. They didn't hold prestigious positions. They weren't learned. They were fishermen and tax collectors. And I can't help but wonder whether Jesus himself thought these guys might not be the ones. I mean, did he go and say, God, well, hey, Dad, I think maybe Bob over here would be better. I mean, he's smarter. He's a Pharisee. He's got more connections. I don't know, but I don't know if Jesus went to God for direction each and every day. I think he did. His walk with God included asking God to guide him and then listening for a response. As I said, I was in prison last week. Most of you know that. And sometimes I get questions in the prison from the brothers in blue. What should I do when I get out? Well, of course, I always say stay connected with God and then find yourself a good church. This is an important decision. And a lot of them want to do the right thing. They don't want to go back. It's an important decision. Have you ever had an important decision and not known what to do? Maybe you've gone to God about it, but you still don't know what to do? For me, often I have an idea of what I want to do, And then I want God to co-sign on it. It's hard to give up control. I run through my life sometimes at that furious rhythm. And even though Jesus calls me to walk with him, I wonder why I can't hear him or finally decide to ask him something. I want a rhythm of peace, but pausing all the time to ask for direction from Jesus instead of being in the habit takes practice. I mean, we have to practice it. It really, for those times when I really need his direction, I mean, that sounds an awful lot like submission. And I want to live my life my way, the way I want. And then I want Jesus when I need direction. I'll go and get an answer and then return to my own rhythm. And the point is that Jesus wants to lead you and guide you. He wants you to spend his time, and he wants to spend time with you. Not just on the major decisions of life, but all the time. So what does that look like? I mean, for me, it would look like, well, me waking up and seeing Jesus in the kitchen saying, coffee's ready. And I mean, I would like ask him, hey, what are we having for breakfast? And then maybe what should I wear today? Or, then on the ride into work, what music are we listening to today? It would be a constant thing. Jesus, come with me. I'm taking out the trash. Jesus, come with me. I got to go clean the bathroom. But he wants to be there with you all the time in every single decision you make. It's not only in the small things. I mean, we ask him to deal with the sticky situations. We ask him to, we should ask him where we should go for lunch or what we should have for lunch or everything, every day living. I want to cultivate a habit of asking Jesus for direction. Then when those major decisions come crashing in, well, maybe I'd already be in the habit of listening to Jesus and asking him what the next move should be. But that's not all. To let Jesus lead me into a rhythm of peace, I should pause and ask for direction, and next I will surrender to God's will, as Jesus did. Because let's face it, the hardest part of exchanging our chaotic rhythm for a peaceful walk with Jesus is surrendering our great ideas. As I said, I had the idea this morning that we were going to kind of surprise Chris, and I thought I had a good idea, but God had a better one because he had him show up. But even saying that this is the hardest part to let go of our ideas and to take hold of his, this part proves that he is wants to be deeply integrated in our ideas. And this has to be the thing that we do when we're letting Jesus take the wheel, because it's hard. Throughout life, truthfully, life is hard. Think of it, what you're going through in your own life, because I don't know all of your things that you were going through, but I bet there's somebody here today that's going through something. And I can think of several hard things that I'm facing, and I have ideas of how each of them ought to go, and I spend a lot of emotional, spiritual, and physical energy around thinking and plotting and scheming and arranging and feeling and trying. And that's, of course, my way, and I bet you probably do the same. And yet Jesus says to me, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy loads, and I will give you rest. Take your yoke upon me, because my yoke is easy." And he wants to lead us through every joy and trial. And this is the easiest, yet the hardest way to live. Jesus had some really fun moments in his ministry and life. And we read in the Bible that he, made friends and like Mary and Martha and Lazarus, and he went to weddings and ate dinner with people, and he loved all the time. And one of my favorite modern day depictions of what Jesus might have looked like was this one. And y'all know I'm not right. I like to joke, I like to laugh, I like to have fun. But I know God made me this way. I bet Jesus laughed a lot because he was the Prince of Joy, connected perfectly to his Father. But his life wasn't all joy. It was pain too. When he was way too young, 33 years old, it came time for him to go to the cross and be crucified for our salvation. He had a walk with God, so he paused that night. Luke 22:39 tells us what happened. Then, accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went, as usual, to the Mount of Olives. Once again, if you're an underlining kind of person, underline those words, as usual. In good times, bad, happy, sad, Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, his special place to connect with God as usual. And there, as he communed with God, he asked if he was sure that the crucifixion was the only way. He submitted to God's plans. Luke 22:42 through 43, the words of Jesus say, "Father, if you are willing to take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." And then an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. Now, why could Jesus surrender to God's will in an extremely difficult time of life? It's because he talked with God every day. He trusted God's direction, and he paused often to talk with God. Jesus lived this inside-out rhythm of life again and again. In the Gospels, we see he withdrew from the crowds to go and pray, alone in a quiet place by the lake, by the hills, in the desert, up the mountains. He shared his heart with the Father. He prayed and meditated on Scripture. He listened to the Father and submitted to his leadership and obeyed. Jesus lived his way as a young carpenter in the quiet decades of his life in a small, obscure town of Nazareth. And he lived that way as a famous preacher in the bright lights and in public ministry. Jesus abided in the Father's love, and he bore the fruit of love. Like Jesus surrendered to God's will as part of the rhythm of the peace of our life. We learn to walk with Jesus. It's not hard. It's the easiest rhythm ever when we've learned it. And no, it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. The me and Jesus thing is not that, I got this down, Jesus. That's not it at all. It doesn't change a thing about our circumstances that we're living in, but when I've been close to Jesus in a daily rhythm for a long period, I think differently. I see things differently. I feel things differently. And when I pause and ask God for direction, and then by being willing to surrender to his will throughout the whole day, each day, and not just every now and then, well, my life will be filled with the same stressful stuff, but I act differently, and I react differently. So today, you may have some symptoms of a hurried rhythm, and you need to take a step to change that rhythm. So today, let's start right now by doing a simple meditation. This is only like a 90-second or probably even less meditation. And you can do this at any time of your day. I mean, you go in the bathroom if you need to, or go into your office and close the door, or whatever you need to do. But first, do this. Close your eyes. and go to a place that's peaceful for you. Some like to picture a beach. Some like to picture the mountains. But go somewhere where you're at calm and peaceful. You're sitting there just enjoying how perfect the day is. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's a light breeze. It's just beautiful. And you hear somebody walking up, and when you look, you see Jesus. Jesus is with you. And he sits down beside you. And as you both sit there in quiet, he leans over and he whispers something in your ear. Hear him. What did he say to you? Open your eyes. On your worship folder, write down what Jesus said to you so you'll remember. You were with Jesus. So the question I've been asking myself, how much time do I really spend with Jesus? I mean, I know there's 24 hours in a day, and I probably spend 6 or 7 of them sleeping, so maybe around 17 hours awake. So how many hours am I actually dedicating to unplugging from everyday life to talk with Jesus, expecting him to break into my life with a word? Now, I've learned around here, because in recovery, there's an 11th step of the 12-step program of recovery. And it says this. It says, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That's not a bad idea for all of us. And there's also a saying I've heard in recovery, it works if you work it. Seeking Jesus all the time, 24/7, is activity. And it's the most important activity of our day. It's the rhythm of our entire short, precious life. So if you're about doing things that you can't turn off your brain, and, well, maybe you're in luck. Jesus changed your mind about what you're doing and thinking about. Pause often and ask Jesus for direction. And then surrender to his will. You can do this if you think about it. I mean, and you can do this all you want. And see how it changes everything. Even if everything seems the same, I think you'll find that you've changed. I'm going to invite the band to come back up. They're going to do one more song for us. And as we do this song, I'm asking, how is your time with Jesus? How much time are you spending with him? There may be some out there that have never spent any time with him. Maybe you don't know him. I would be glad to introduce you. And maybe you're saying to yourself, like I'm saying to myself, I need more time. I need to give more time to him. I need to have him with me when I take out the trash. I need him always. I need him in every single decision I make all day long. Come to the altar. Give up the control. Surrender. Let's stand and worship together. Come as you feel the Spirit lead.